Good afternoon. This is Jenny Gee coming to you live from the churchyard on this very cold and snowy Wednesday. But it's kind of, invigorating, lovely in all of its own way. But I wanted to come to you today. I've missed you over the past couple weeks, missed doing this with the holidays that we had with Christmas and New Year's. I didn't log on, so a little bit of a restful time, which was lovely. But here we are back again and resting in the amazing creative world that we live in and has been gifted to us by God. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with deer. And you perhaps have deer out in your yard wandering around, and they really have like a very interesting cycle of things that happen all year long that we could sit and talk about each month. But here in January, what is starting to happen is that the bucks are losing their antlers. And if you are able to get out and you've seen maybe a little bachelor group of bucks in your neighborhood, in your yard, you may go out on a hunt for the shed antlers and maybe find one, which would be really cool. So a little bit about the kind of the cycle of what's going on. In May, the bucks will begin to just develop kind of like little nubbins, velvety nubbins on top of their head. And those will grow kind of slowly at first and then sort of take off late in summer. And it all is dependent, how large of a set of antlers the buck has is really dependent on their nutrition and their health. And so a buck is never going to choose antlers first over its own body health. Not that it's a choice, but you know what I mean. It's going to any kind of the nutrition that they're taking in, if it's needed to for strong bones and for overall health, thereby limiting maybe the antler growth that year. That's how it'll go, which makes a lot of sense. You're not going to do something that's showing you to be the best choice for the doe health-wise if you're not healthy. So it makes very good sense. And again, I kind of talk about these things like they're choices, but they are just the way nature unfolds, and kind of the mysteries that we have around us in the natural world are so interesting to think about. So in May they get these little nubbins and they grow, and their rut season, R-U-T, their rut season was actually in October and November, and that was the breeding season. And rut is, I think it's Latin, but it comes from a different root, and it means to roar. And if you have ever been around a buck during mating season, you'll understand the snorts and the growls and the grunts that they make are quite loud and a little unnerving. So that happens. Their antlers are at their peak. They have probably in September, when I said they were velvety nubbins and they're velvet covered, until about September, when the deer start to, the bucks start to determine their territory and let the others know. And they'll rub their antlers onto small trees and scrape up the bark. So if you've ever seen a buck rub, it's called, where the bark is all scraped up, that's because the buck has come by and has begun to name his territory. And then they mate in October and November. And so the females that you're seeing out perhaps in your yard right now are pregnant, and you may see the females in biggish groups. It's the female and her offspring and maybe her sisters and their offspring, and they kind of live together in a group at this time of year, sort of helping each other communally. So, and the bucks are the same. They're in bachelor groups. Last winter, I don't have one like that this year, but last winter I had 5 bucks who would just kind of make their way through my backyard foraging. So, but antler growth itself is really quite interesting. Scientists have discovered that if they take, it's called a pedicle. If there's a thin layer of cells at the top of the buck's head, and if they were to take that and like surgically scrape those cells, then antler production wouldn't happen. It's this thin layer of cells that year after year is the kind of the impetus and allows this antler growth to happen. It takes a lot of protein in the deer's diet, and minerals and vitamins, and depending on time of year, it determines like what they're eating. And what's really interesting, if you think about acorns, we don't sit down and eat acorns. They're loaded with tannins. Tannins kind of get in the way of digestion. But how do deer get around that? Because deer eat a lot of acorns, and they're a good source of the protein and the minerals and nutrients that they need. Their saliva actually has an enzyme in it that breaks down those tannins so that they can digest them and get all of those nutrients from it. So it's all just kind of amazing. But what's happening now is there's no need. The mating season is over, done with, and these antlers begin much like how we talked about in the fall. If you tuned in on the fall when we were talking about the leaves falling off and how there's this like little abscission layer, a corky layer. It's kind of the same thing. There's kind of like a layer that grows between the bone where the antler is attached and the skull, and that layer grows in place and they just shed them. So they don't carry them around. And they'll not have antlers of any sort really until visible to us until May, but they always have that little layer in there ready to start growing, and the need for lots and lots of nutrition in order to make it happen. So maybe that will make the deer decimating your garden a little easier to palate, or maybe not. I don't know. But they are amazing creatures. And again, just points to such a creative God as we learn all these different things and settle in on, what is around us and how they function and how they survive. And one of the things that has nothing to do with their antlers is, I don't know if you knew that deer have two different coats. They have a coat, and I'm not wearing a very good coat today, but they have a summer coat that is shorter hairs, and then they have a very dense winter coat. Their underfur is very, very dense, and their outer is, if you were to touch a deer, their outer hairs, they're called guard hairs, and they're very long and they're hollow. So they have that air trap, kind of like a down coat. So they have this thick under layer and these long guard hairs that cover their bodies that keeps them nice and toasty and warm. So good for them, because it is not toasty or warm out right now, but they need these different ways to survive. So hi, Eleanor, I see you there. So I hope you have a great rest of the day, rest of the week. If you have any chance to get out and just enjoy nature, even though it's cold, if you bundle up, you will be warm and enjoying it. And I will see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.